Yep, I can see the YouTube button, so we're streaming.
Can you? Okay.
Hi, everybody. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Yep, I can see the YouTube button, so we're streaming.
Can you? Okay.
Hi, everybody. We'll get
Weird. That was
started
like
in
a
a couple of
delay.
minutes.
Yeah, there is a little delay in the stream, but it is streaming now.
Okay, just as long as I'm not talking, and then a second later I hear myself talking.
Nope, I have muted you. I'm just going to double check on my phone that it's still working.
Okay.
So ignore the feedback. Perfect. It is working.
Okay. We're waiting for some more attendees since it's almost noon. We have others joining as we speak, so I'm just going to wait a minute or two more. Well, we did have Sue Stone and she left. I was that captivating already without even starting. Okay, I'm gonna get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Michael Brashears. If you don't know me, I'm the CEO of Community Mental Health of Ottawa County. I'm approaching next month on the 30th will be my first full year. So I've been here about 11 months as the permanent director, not even a full fiscal year. And boy, what I can tell you being a year back after a long absence in the role is change is consistent throughout the state. A couple of updates for those that have been following me on the board meetings. We had done an advocacy push for the state to release $200 million that they were withholding from the CMH budget that was appropriated by the legislature. I want to say that your advocacy efforts have worked and they are scheduled to push out 140 million roughly of that 200 million this fiscal year. And we're getting details this week how much this will increase Medicaid revenues for each of the regions. Now, I'm still pushing for the rest of the money because we still need all of that remaining 60 million in the system. And we'll continue to do what we've been doing the last several months. But I wanted to thank many of you that I know contacted legislators and advocated for the release of Medicaid dollars that the state was withholding. And now they are scheduled to send the money out to the system. Details to come more specifically in the next week or two. So thank you all for that. The way this works is that we have people muted. If someone wants to ask a question, they have to raise their hand or put it in the chat. And then today I have Anna Bednarek, the COO of Ottawa County, CMH, kind of manning that. She's known today as Amanda. She's fake Amanda Westrate today. Amanda couldn't join us, but Anna is playing that role. And there may be a delay in getting me understanding that you needed to ask a question, then responding it. Okay, so So the other thing I wanted to touch upon before I get to the state's plan to restructure the system is information on the federal level. We don't have the details of what the Senate's going to do with the big bill or whatever we're calling it at the federal level. And to knowledge, there aren't any real specific cuts to behavioral health Medicaid in terms of the waivers at all listed. However, and I stress this in the most strenuous way I can, any reduction in Medicaid in terms of who is eligible will impact the behavioral health system. We are primarily funded by the number of Medicaid enrollees we have in each county. So if the federal government passes legislation that limits or restricts or reduces who's eligible, we will suffer greatly as a system. So we don't know the specifics yet, and we're going to keep an eye on it. But any cut to Medicaid, or any cut to eligibility, I should say, will result in reduced funding for behavioral health services across the country, but especially in Michigan. So obviously, we don't want that to happen. So once we get more details on what's being proposed in the Senate, we will then do an analysis and then accordingly try to advocate against that. We're doing it already, but in just general principles. So what I want to talk about today is the state of Michigan's plan to restructure the managed care system for behavioral health in Michigan. As you may or may not be aware, the way the state is set up is you have the state of Michigan, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, who contracts with 10 what are called PHPs, or regional entities, which we are part of the Lakeshore regional entity, who then contact with the CMHs per region in their region. So there are 10 regions. There are 46 CMHs that contract within one of those regions. We're in the Lakeshore regional entity, which has us, Muskegon, and it has Allegan and Kent County and Mason, Oceana, and Lake counties all together. And we work in partnership with Lakeshore Regional Entity to manage and deliver the Medicaid behavioral health entitlements we have in the state of Michigan. We're called what you call a carve out. We're not part of the health plans. Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Priority Health Plan, all the health plans that may do Medicaid services on the physical health side. Not may, they do it. So we have been separate, if you were at my last presentation, and the recording's still there, from everybody since 1959. We have been a distinct tradition of care that's county-based in partnership with regional entities to deliver and manage behavioral health care. Now, I put in the chat a link to the website that I'm about to share with you that actually has a recorded 10-minute video from the state explaining what they're going to do, timelines. And I'm going to go over with you via documents, but you can watch their video explaining this as well, so that you hear it right from them. So I'm going to share my screen and get right into it. Okay, if I've done this well, you should see a document that says Specialty Behavioral Health Services. Anna, if you could indicate if that did transfer correctly.
That is showing, and it looks like there might be something in Q&A.
Okay, I see that.
I will reshare the video to the chat.
Okay, thank you. So the page that I'm on has the link to the video right here. But when you try to play a webinar within a webinar, it's very difficult. So I'm going to go through what they are saying through the documents they have here. In general, what the state wants to do is reduce the number of these PHPs, or these regional managers of Medicaid, from 10 to 3. And it may be lower or maybe more, but you'll see in this proposal, they have 3 and a map and how they want to do it. So if it was just reducing the numbers of these managed care entities, then okay, but they kept the structure the same and kind of how we're doing it the same. It would be just like something we've done in the past. When we first started managed care in Michigan, we actually had 18 regions that were linked up to the 46 different CMHs in the state. Then it got reduced to 10, and this proposal reduces it to 3. What I'm going to talk about, though, in going through this presentation is that this reduction of the number of these PHPs or regional entities, as we call them, is fundamentally different than in the past when they just reduced the number of them from 18 to 10. What I'm going to try to convey to you is that if this plan gets laid out in the general tenor on which it's being presented, the general principles, this is going to sound dramatic, but I mean it. The community mental health system as you know it will cease to end. The tradition of community mental health will be over. And so the importance of understanding this is vital. And some people, when they watch this video later, will say that Dr. Bashir is an alarmist, that he's just trying to save his job and the CMH job and the Regent's job. If you ask the fire chief, does he want to save his job to keep the fire department public? The answer is yes. Mine is the same way. Community mental health is just like the police department, the fire department, any essential public partnership. So the reality of the situation is that, yeah, do CMHs and PHPs have a vested interest in staying in existence? Of course. Just like the police department or the fire department. So I do understand that some watching this will say, well, the state just wants to restructure and Bashir's and the regions want to keep their jobs. And you can have your opinion. What I'm about to show you should convince you the necessity of keeping the core components of our system in place. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to go out of order in the list on the website because it's better to kind of really look at this this way. So the first thing that should pop up is a regional map, and I think I just made it bigger. I believe you can see it. If you cannot see a regional map, please let Anna know.
Map is showing, Michael.
Thank you. We'll be doing this out because we're getting better about this. All right. So right now, this is the anticipated recommended regions that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is proposing, going from 18 regions to 3. And you can see it's split up of like the Great North, the northern region. And then there's like this line that goes right across Mason Lake, Osceola, Clare, Gladwin, where all those Gladwin counties, as one managed care Medicaid management region. Then you have a metro region of Wayne County, Detroit, Oakland, and Macomb, kind of like the larger CMH systems in the state. And then you notice, yes, Beth, I'll be talking about that in a moment. Okay. And if you put something in the chat, just remember I can't do 2 things at once, but I'll go back and look periodically. I intend to cover all of that. Then you look into the central region. There's literally 33, there's like 1 billion counties in here. So just by the region size alone, there'll be no ability to have local control or local input and regional Medicaid management at all. Okay. So when I get into what Beth's question is related to what are the functions and that stuff, this will even drive that point home. So Dr. Bashir's is 3. What's the difference between 10 regions, 18 regions, 3 regions? Well, when you get to like this, you're getting back to this notion of like, before we had kind of like these managed care regions. We actually, each CMH had a Medicaid contract with the state. So there were 46 contracts, and the state acted as one big region. This is kind of still keeping this layer of management between the CMH system and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, but with these three gigantic regions, and someone that's proposing to manage the Medicaid can bid on all three of these or one of these. So you could have a organization, say like Blue Cross Blue Shield, manage the whole thing, or Priority Health in the central region with another bidder. So it's unclear on that, but I'll tell you about the characteristics in a moment. So this central region, if you look at the map where it says, we have Lake, Mason, Oceana, I can never say it, Muskegon, Auburn, Allegan. That's currently the Lakeshore Regional entity right here. And we, in partnership with the Lakeshore Regional entity, manage the Medicaid benefit and entitlement throughout the region. This would then go to this management of it would go to some centralized group responsible for managing the Medicaid benefit and every single person in that region. So the ability to have local control will be pretty much destroyed. So why did they pick these regions? Well, they align up with some of the physical healthcare regions, but then they just started to do it by kind of number of covered lives. And so this metro region has a lot of more folks in it than, say, the whole North does. And so I don't know the exact logic model, but this is what they came up with. Any questions on the map before I get into the details?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, great. All right. And on this website, when you go to it, folks, if you hit the regions detail table, I know this is really small to see, it will tell you which CMH would report to which region. So they've obviously thought this through. They know, like, we'll get to, like, the Lakeshore Regional entity we're part of would report to the central region. To the right, you see that, and the counties that they represent. So there is a table available for everybody to see which CMH would fall in which region. And that's on their website for you to see, which means it's more than just a guess. They've really thought about how they're going to align this. Okay, I'm now going to go through the anticipated contract requirements for these regions. So Beth, this is the point where raise your hand if we're in a section and I go too fast and you need a question, okay? So the biggest thing is when you look at the first general principle with the subcomponents. And I'm going to kind of go through these and I'm going to tell you what I think they mean to us. And then after this discussion and further questions about their plan, I'm going to tell you what the Community Mental Health Association, our board association, which is like our trade union, says about the impact to the public system. So it won't be just Dr. Bashir's viewpoint. It'll be a collective viewpoint from all of us around the state that have put together kind of a response to this general guideline. Please understand that the things we're about to go over are not the full requirement that they're going to make in determining who can be one of these new super PHPs, as I call them, or regions. And they have the ability to change that at any time before the details are released. And I'm going to go over the timeline with you as well. So with advocacy, some of these things could change. So this is not in cement, but this enough tells us the characteristics of what they're looking for. So the first main point is an actually huge one, is a very big point. Operate exclusively as a payer entity independent from providers. Yeah. Yep, I see that, Beth. Okay. Right now.
Question in the Q&A too. I don't know if you want it now or you want to
just wait until I get through this one part. Okay. Right now, the way it's set up is that our CMH participates in full partnership with the regional entity. We co-manage the Medicaid benefit with the Lakeshore Regional Entity, or or PHP. We get a capitated budget, which means we get a dollar amount we have to live within 1 year within our CMH and manage all of the services in partnership. This would say that the new region will have to be 100% fully independent from providers, including CMHs. So under the new proposed structure, CMHs could not co-manage the service and would be reduced only to a fee-for-service provider like other providers. Right now, if you have a contract with CMH and it's a Medicaid services contract, we're managing it on behalf of the regional entity. They delegate that to us. On this arrangement, that would be severed, meaning that Community Mental Health of Ottawa County would really have no responsibility for the service contracts of Medicaid providers. We would be done developing them, figuring out the rate for them, managing them. We would be reduced to a service provider. So we'd have no ability to coordinate care. Now, I'll get to the second point, then I'll go to some questions. Contractors may not delegate managed care functions to contract provider entities. That means right now, the regional entity that we're part of delegates managed care functions to us, like claims billing, developing the provider network, like establishing and monitoring residential and other contract rates, dealing with self-determination and self-directed care, individual budgets and rates. If this language is done in the way that it's suggesting, community mental health service programs CMHs would not be able to do any of those functions. That would be done at the regional level. So these two bullet points are very important, is that the regional entity has to be 100% separate from the CMH. We're not members that form this thing like we are now. And this region can't delegate any. It's underlined in bold. Contractors, that's the regional entities applying, may not delegate managed care functions to us. We're a provider entity and a co-manager. Okay, questions so far? Let's see here. So there's a question that says, is this a bill to be? No, it is not. This is not a bill from a legislative body changing the system like in the past. In the past, there were bills introduced by legislators. The Shirkey Bill 298, Mary Whiteford had a bill to kind of deal with some of this. This is the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services saying to the public mental health system, we're bidding you out, where we have the ability to say we no longer want the same contractual arrangement. We want other entities to be able to do a similar service, and it does not require legislation to approve it. But guess who does have to approve it? The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS. The state would have to submit a proposal to change the management of the system to them for approval. But it's very critical to understand this is not a bill. Now, when I get to mental health code stuff, any changes to the mental health code will require legislative approval. And so if they try to change the mental health code to make this easier, which we'll talk about that in a moment, then yeah, that does require a vote. Any questions on the two bullet points I've talked about so far? Because we've got up to 22 people watching now. So again, raise your hand if you want to ask a question live, because I'm not going to answer in the chat.
Did you get Beth's question that's in the Q&A as well? Sorry. What about
Can you
authorization
just
of
ask
services?
it, like unmute and ask it? Because it's going to be very difficult for me to read and keep going back while I'm doing this. Just raise your hand and then we'll ask. Put it in the queue, then I know we'll get to you. So Beth, what's the question? Thank you. She's being unmuted now. So Beth, you have to hit your unmute button.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I sure can. Thank you.
Okay. So it talks about utilization management going to the PIHP. Will that be like a more broad and global function, or is that going to be like authorization of each service, including amount, duration, and scope that will be
It's
done by
our
the,
it's my and the board association and the regional entities and the currently interpretation. It means every aspect of utilization management because they don't want to have any MCO functions delegated to the CMH. So Beth, as you know, that's what we do a lot of here. We're
Yeah.
helping in determining amount, scope, and duration, authorizing. And Beth, I think the biggest risk is to self-directed care. They haven't thought this through. Like,
So if we want to move, so if I'm getting CLS services and then I get a job
Right.
and I want to move my CLS supports to supported employment, I would have to go to this PIHP to get
That's right.
approval for that change.
You would. CMH will be reduced, Beth, to nothing more than picking which services of Medicaid we want to provide. I'd have
Yeah.
no management responsibilities at all on Medicaid. In general fund, I would. Safety net services, I would. But I'd be in the business if somebody said to us, like, hey, I'd like to have this. I'd say, go talk to Super Region. I have nothing to do with that. I won't even have to manage, Beth, a capitated budget.
Right.
And so it fundamentally changes the relationship.
hmm hmm
And I don't think people understand. I mean, we have a lot of improvement to do in our system. It is not perfect. Definitely reform is needed for continuity, increased choice, all of the things that people were saying. But this ends community mental health as you know it. It's over if this happens. I'll be nothing more. And as a county department, I'm going to tell all of you, one of the few CMHs at a county department, I don't know if Ottawa County wants to be in the business of just doing healthcare, being a healthcare provider. It's not a governmental thing. Now, we would still have to exist as a CMH for our general fund services and safety net services, but that's not the Medicaid benefits at all. And Medicaid is 80% of what we do. So, this is, if they operationalize this, Beth and others, the way it's listed here, we have no ability to co-manage the benefit. And I'll be reduced to, hey, do I want to be one of many support coordination agencies or ACT teams? I would imagine they'd want community mental health to do ACT. We're the only ones that are doing it. Well, primarily, there are some providers that do it. But, all right, so let me go through this next thing and I'll answer more questions. The third bullet on this, contractors must establish and maintain governance for the payer entity, that's the new thing, that is fully independent and distinct from any providers which they contract for Medicaid cover services, as well as from any owners holding direct or indirect interest in those providers. This governance responsibility includes, but is not limited to, daily operations, quality protocols, managing consumer complaints, in accordance with conflict of interest safeguards and ownership. Right now, the regional entities that we're part of, Lakeshore, we are members of that thing. We have board members are appointed by counties, and the CMH CEOs are members of the entity, and we have a voice in the governance as CMHs to the regions. This would say not allowed, can't do it. That means the relationship between the community mental health system and the managers of the Medicaid, the PHPs, is forever severed. It's gone. It won't be allowable. So your local CMH will have no say in the governance, formation, and impact to our communities at these new regions. That's what's different with this approach versus other attempts in the past to reduce the number size of these regional entities. The difference is those past bills did not sever the relationship between the public community mental health system and the regional entities. This does intentionally. This allows a health plan to manage the whole thing. So you can see that the next bullet is a double down on that statement. The new PHPs must have a separate and distinct board structure that is not shared with any contract provider entity. That's the CMHs. Right now, we kind of share this. The board must prioritize meaningful representation from persons served. What, with 42 counties? How do you do that? Recognizing their unique insights and lived experience is vital to guiding governance. So the new entity could have other community members that are appointed somehow, but they can't have any relationship with any provider, including CMH. And some would say, gee, Michael, isn't that a good thing to avoid a conflict of interest? Isn't there a conflict of interest with the CMHs and the PHP being together? And I would say that's how public systems have to manage. You have to have local organizations in tandem with statewide or region-wide organizations to ensure that the entitlement is being rolled out correctly. This privatizes the system. Now you're going to say, Michael, you just said privatize, and the next thing says nonprofit organizational structure. That's the region that they want. It has to be a nonprofit. And it will, and what they've said at the bottom, additional guidance on the definition of nonprofit is forthcoming. They haven't defined that. It's our interpretation that the current PHPs in the system, Lakeshore Regional Entity, cannot come together with other regional entities and say, here's our proposal to keep doing it. We believe that the current PHP structure we have now is prohibited from putting even an application because we would have to give up all of our governance structures and delegated functions right now. So we're precluded from it. So it kind of says like public-private partnerships can do it, public entities can do it. But let me recap. The new region will be 3 regions, operate exclusively as a payer entity, fully independent from providers, cannot delegate managed care functions, so CMHs can't co-manage it like we're doing now, must have separate and distinct boards, must have governance structures that sever the relationship between the CMHs, and must have a nonprofit organizational structure for this new thing, details to be determined. The other things they're saying is that they have to have a national accreditation. All of our regional entities have national accreditation already. And they have to submit a regional proposal. They must be, they can't just say, we'll do it for certain counties. They have to do it based on, I'll get back to it, this map. So a bidder will have to manage all of the central region. They can't just say, well, we'll do it for just half of them. It's a full regional management entity. Okay, any questions or feedback from what I'm presenting thus far?
I'm not seeing any hand. Oh, a hand just raised. Hold on.
It was Beth,
Beth,
I think.
Beth, if you could unmute yourself, please.
I don't want to take over the conversation, but
That's
I'm coming back to what you said about the providers
Mhm.
and that the PIHPs would be responsible for all the contracts with providers.
Yeah,
So if a local, what is currently CMH, has a small provider that provides excellent services, they would no longer be able to contract with them. That would have to be done through the PIHP that manages that whole region. Is that what I'm understanding?
yes, if it's Medicaid, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's as bad as you think. It means that there's no local discussion
Mm-hmm. And
on
that includes rate setting too, then, right?
everything.
Yeah.
Like my job would be far different. The role of CMH would be far different. And who I'm worried the most about is self-directed or self-determination care. because, how you base an individual budget and who assists those people, we have to greatly improve the way we're doing it,
Right.
right? I can't imagine
Right.
Joe Blow from Blue Cross somewhere trying to figure it out with a family.
Well, and I worry about the smaller providers too
Yes,
that provide really,
yes,
really good service.
yes,
And
they do.
will they then be responsible for providing service across the whole region? And then if they can't, will we lose that
Well,
access to their services?
Well, they would be most likely, hypothetically, and the devils will be in the details. And believe me, once I get the details of this, you know me, I'll read through them real quick and get everybody on the phone. Okay. But my hunch is that they will allow local contracts still. They would need to do that. But how it's managed, they can't, unless they change this, can't delegate that management function to me at all.
Right.
So even if I wanted to say, yes, let's do this, I would be just like them in this scenario when it comes to Medicaid services. I would be just another provider saying, hey, we're interested in using county employees, CMH employees to do this Medicaid service directly. And I would no longer have any ability to manage or direct people or even develop other provider resources. I'd be effectively out of that business.
Yep.
And that's what happens in the private sector, right?
Yeah.
You're just on a panel.
And then
And so,
for those smaller providers trying to jump through the hoops of what I would expect would
yeah,
be
it's
big
Beth, it's bad
quality
enough dealing with
improvement.
us.
Yeah. And I
It's
mean,
hard enough dealing with
yeah,
us.
yeah,
Can you imagine? Like, we're difficult. Can you imagine? Okay, so, and throughout this, I'm really trying to stress that our current system is in need of reform for sure. For sure. So this isn't like we're the best system and we have to keep it. This is a tradition of care that has to be maintained and continuously improved on. But this proposal ends it. So I'm going to switch to this other document. You should see on your screen another document that says concerns regarding this. Did that successfully get through?
Yes.
Right. Now, think of it like this. The first part's like the State of the Union, where the state goes, so this is the State of the Union. And this is like the Republican or Democratic rebuttal, right? So this is the systems, CMH directors, PHP directors, coming together and say, let's address some of these things, and then talk about why we see it doesn't do what the state says it's going to do. Now, this is our advocacy stance on some of these things. And each one of you has a right to have a different opinion on it. So I'm not saying if you're in my provider network or if you're a family that's under my care that you better get on board and use these talk. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is I have an obligation to tell you what I think and present the issues so people actually know what's going to happen. So there are at least 7 misconceptions. One is that the plan will improve the lives of Michiganders who receive mental health, substance abuse disorder, and intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I'm going to tell you why we don't believe that's the case. That this plan is part of a state's approach of dealing with potential Medicaid cuts. This is not. We've been getting all kinds of phone calls saying, hey, is the state doing this because of what the federal government's doing? This was far in motion before that happened, way before President Trump was elected. This is not a response. The state restructuring plan is not a response to potential federal Medicaid cuts. I want to be clear. This is the desire of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services wanting to restructure the management of Medicaid services. But there's nothing related to the cuts because we don't know what they are. So just want to be clear on that. There was some confusion in the community, like, oh, they're just doing this because, no, it has nothing to do with it. This plan is not so bad. That's kind of like a misconception. It simply changes the payer of the CMH from public PHP to a private health plan. It's not just simply changing who sends CMH a check every month to manage the system. it's severing the relationship between the PHP and the CMH. I will not be getting a check to manage the system. I will not be giving a payment. It's not simply reducing the number of these entities to save money because we have 10 of them. And if we have 3, we'll have less cost administratively. It's my belief it's actually going to increase expenditures, and we're going to lose close to $500 million in administrative efficiencies. And I'll make my point in a minute on that. So it's not just reducing the number and we're just keeping things the same. This ends the relationship between the PHPs and the CMH. I will be saying it 100 times. Another misconception, the design and implementation mechanics of this procurement plan are so complicated that it will not go forward. No, they can move forward with this regardless of the level of complexity. They don't have to have every single aspect of it figured out to implement it. In fact, if you've been part of the system for any period of time, you know this is the case. We're constantly implementing bad ideas without figuring it out and then dealing with it later. This is the trend, the norm, to do huge implementations without thinking about all of the variables specifically and giving enough time to address them. They want to implement this whole thing in less than 15 months. From here's what you need to be one of these providers, naming them, and then in a matter of months taking over the system. And I'll show you, they have in the video that I couldn't show you, there's actually a timeline there, and I'll try to pull it up. If not, you can see it on the video. This will be a fait accompli by the end of, it'll start on 10/1/26. So 10/1/25 is around the corner. A year from that, this has to be fully implemented and separated from the current structure. 5 on this is the politics of Michigan are lined up to push this plan through. Nothing that we can do to stop it. Oh, that's not the case. If we contact the governor's office, legislators, to put pressure on MDHHS to stop this, it can work. We just saw that with the $140 million of the $200 million they were keeping pushed out. Your voice does matter. If you contact the governor's office and say, do not move forward with this procurement proposal, it does make a difference. Contacting legislators make a difference. So that's a misconception. It's going to happen anyways. You know, I even had some CMH colleagues, CEOs say, it's going to happen anyways. Let's just wait and see. There's no wait and see. You must kill this now. I'm not taking a chance on waiting to see if the public mental health system collapses. Michael, you're being dramatic. It's my job to know the variables associated with this, and I'm telling you, it will be the total collapse of the public mental health system. Yes, that sounds very much like apocalypse and drama. I wish and I hope I'm wrong. The CMS requires the state to do this. They do not. CMS is not requesting us to do this at all. We're not being asked by the federal CMS to change our structure at all. In fact, they're going to have to approve it. And CMS is not asking us to change the current arrangements with CMHs and these regional entities. They have not put anything in writing to our knowledge or any formal request to change the system. This plan is not a plan to privatize. Yes, it is. Because it will allow nonprofits, public-private things to bid on this, and it privatizes who are the servers, the providers of the service. We are a quasi-governmental agency. We have federal immunity. We have all kinds of public governance immunity in the services. It privatizes because any company, for-profit or nonprofit, can be a provider in the system. So big for-profit organizations could ask for a contract with this new region. It privatizes who provides the care. So I'll stop here to see if you have any questions on these misconceptions that I'm kind of saying that the plan says this, but it really does this. Or any feedback people would want. Yeah, okay, so Beth put something in the chat. Is this a response to conflict-free? You know, kinda, to be honest. Yes, if you interpret conflict-free as that a provider of care should have no management of the care, like CMHs, right? Yeah, you could say that makes it really clean, but the cost of that is the privatization of the service network and the elimination of community mental health as a county-based or an authority-based in a county to help manage the services in that local community. So from a strict reading of conflict-free, yeah, one could say, sure, it does that. But with a chainsaw, there's a way to deal with conflict-free requirements, like putting internal controls within a CMH with oversight from a region to ensure that a provider, CMH providing a service, isn't giving themselves an unfair advantage of that, and they're making sure we're offering choice of other providers, right? So yeah, with the chainsaw, it definitely does that. It really does that. But there's other ways to address conflict-free care without the privatization of the service network. Did that answer it? Does that make sense? I think Bev said yes. I couldn't hear her.
You said yes. Did you answer her first question as well?
Let me see.
I am thinking that the state wants to do this to increase
Yes.
continuity.
Okay, so what I'm thinking this means is, gee, if right now, one of the biggest complaints that we have about the current system is it does matter where you live in terms of what's offered and the consistency and continuity of benefits offered from region to region. That's a valid concern, and one that the current PHP system has been striving to fix, but we haven't solved it yet. So one could say, yeah, if you have three regions, you'll have more continuity of what's authorized, how and the rates and the service packages offered to people within a given county. And at one point, Dr. Bashir's here was in support of a bill that Mary Whiteford did, Representative Whiteford did, to come to one PHP. And it was that logic of continuity of care and what I call the portability of a benefit from county to county that I was saying this would be good. The difference between that and this is it still maintained the relationship between the CMHs to carry out such continuity, Beth and others. That if there's a guideline, that we're all expected and enforced to follow it in the same way. Well, the state had all that before we did these management regions. The state, as Beth knows and others, used to come around to each of the CMHs every year, a whole team from MDHHS, to ensure these things. Once they sent it to the regional entities have been doing that in lieu of the state. So this plan doesn't solve that problem at all. In fact, I would say that it actually complicates it more, because if you wanted ultimate continuity and you were going to use the number of PHPs to be the best way to do that, then you would go to one. Because there's nothing in here that says the three regions that are there have to agree on everything or have to have the same exact everything. Well, it might be in the details. But if you're going to shrink the number of PHPs to get increase in continuity and consistency, you'd go to one. That's my fundamental belief. And you might have regional offices. So I'll tell you some other things about this plan. You know, I'm going to skip around on the screen, and we'll make these available to people as an email after this to the participants. You know, the biggest thing to me is number 2 and 3. Destroys the long-standing 60-year partnership between the state of Michigan and the local county-based community mental health public managed substance disorder system. This will be the end of the tradition of care of community mental health. The whole reason we had deinstitutionalization The whole reason we said, let's serve people with developmental disabilities out of institutions in local communities depended on a very robust and coordinated effort on a regional level and local level at the CMH level. This ends that. And if I'm a family member that depends on the system, our system now, that needs improvement for sure, this is terrifying. It's going to be like now. All right. So right now, if you need private mental health services and you need counseling, okay, I got to go to Priority Health as the manager. I have to go and find who their providers are. And then I got to see if I have to do all this, the provider has any openings. And then I got to wait 3 months for the service because there are no service timeliness guidelines monitored by the local CMH, right? Then I can't get into care for 6 months to a year. And that means I have to go to the hospital. And who's watching all that in the public system if this gets done? Not us. Right now, I'm looking at who's hospitalized every month. Why couldn't they be diverted? Did they get into our care, another level of care? And it's not perfect. Sometimes we have delays and waits. I know. But I'm watching it closely every month. You think somebody in the middle of the state responsible for 30 other CMHs under contract are going to do that? Nope. Tell you that right now. So all the problems you have in the private system will be becoming our problems with no public safety net on the Medicaid side. It destroys community partnerships. How am I going to coordinate services with the police department, jails, jail diversion, community action groups when I'm just a provider? I can't do anything besides provide a service. And I have to get the right rate from the new regional entity to do it, right? Providers know this experience. Thing is, it's our belief in number 6 that the current standards don't allow our existing regions to come together and say, all right, we'll just have less of them. We'll coordinate better and still have the relationship with the CMHs that we have and do a better job with standards. It doesn't do that, it just destroys it. The fragmentation of services is one of the biggest risks of this. No longer would there be an organization like a CMH saying, what's the relationship between preventative services, current services, level of care determinations? We wouldn't be doing any of that. We would just simply pick which services we would want to provide in competition, not coordination, competition to other providers in our community. And I'm a county department. Sometimes my employees cost more than other employees. I know that. But we're also coordinating the entitlement at the same time. Yes, could we do better? You bet. More choice? You bet. But this eliminates it. I wouldn't have to talk to any community member besides those I'm delivering services to under contract. I don't have to care about the whole person. It fragments it. Person-centered planning becomes bullcrap in this model. Person-centered planning turns into, let's see if it's eligible by the insurance company. No, the insurance company said no. End of discussion. Well, Michael, it's like that now. There's a lot more checks and balances. We don't know the impact on this in terms of appeals. I wouldn't be managing appeals anymore at the local level. Good luck. Recipient rights. Why would I be responsible for the rights system for contract providers I have no control over? That's going to have to change. They don't have that in their philosophy yet. No one's even checked with the rights department at the state level what the impact of this is. Rights department's in the mental health code. So am I responsible as the CEO that signs all of the rights complaints as a service provider only to ensure that the services and other providers that I have no relationship with are being held within the context of recipient rights? I will not take that responsibility on. So the current plan fails to address some of the legitimate concerns. I'll stop sharing this. And I want to be able to see everybody. Hold on. Okay. So the current plan does not really address some of the concerns that I'm aware of in the system. We want more choice. We want more continuity on a lot of things. Rates, services offered from one CMH to one region of another. And I agree with these things. And quality of care. But the notion that this plan will reduce administrative cost and give more money to the people served is a lie. It's not in here. In fact, on the sheet I was showing you, the overhead for private plans right now is about 15% compared to 2% of the PHP system. This is called the medical loss ratio. In our current system, 2% of a lot of the money goes to the PHPs to run it. In the private health plans right now, that's 15% for Medicaid health plans. That's a difference of $500 million cut to service providers if this goes on. But Michael, they can just take that 2% and add it to their 15%, like within that 15%. No, it's 15% of all of the Medicaid dollars would have to go to manage it if the health plans do it. That's their data. That's not our data. That's their request. That means $500 million right off the bat. Doesn't trickle down at all. But Michael, there's too many bites of the apple. See, the state sends it to the region, they take a bite. CMHs get the money, they take a bite, then it gets to the providers. Okay, that's still far less of a percentage or bites of the apple if the health plans would do it. Our little bites, theirs is one gigantic bite. That makes sense. But Michael, wouldn't eliminating some of these eliminate costs? No, because all of the managed care functions have to be done anyways. If we're not helping them as a CMH, do you think these big health plans are going to go, oh, well, since we have to do it all, we no longer can just delegate it to somebody, that it's going to be cheaper? No. You're going to end up with less choice, less coordination of care, no local control, the death of the CMH unit. I mean it, for Medicaid recipients. And I'm not being too dramatic. When the details come out on this plan, I will be holding a series of meetings again, going through the details of it. That means what the actual requirements are for these things. These are just the general guidelines we've been given. So what you can do now, and we'll be sending out information to do that, is a way to contact legislators or the governor and saying, please stop the current PHP contract procurement proposal that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is initiating. In fact, you could say, why don't we focus on reforming the current system instead of destroying it? I'm going to blow it up before we fix it. You don't know what you're going to get. I'm for reform. I'm for increased continuity, increased choice, fair reimbursement to all of providers and families and consumers in our system. But this is not that. It doesn't accomplish any of those things. And those that have known me a long time, I was in the provider side for 12 years of my 25-year career. I've been on the other side of this argument. I have publicly testified in support of a bill that would have shrunk these things together. And boy, I took it on the chin. And I'll tell you what, this isn't that. This is the fundamental end of community mental health for Medicaid recipients. It will be over. No over dramatization here, just telling you the truth. But we didn't know. Well, Ottawa County's going to know, I'll tell you that, every step of the way for the next several months. Okay, this is the point where I'll open up any questions, dialogue about any aspects of this or any other concerns about it. There's no more formal things to go over at this time. So anybody that has a comment, a question, a concern, this is the time to do it now by raising your hand. And I will be sending out specific ways that you can advocate to your legislators. The Board Association has a way you can do it where it auto-populates your legislators from your area code that you're coming from. And you can just put in like, please don't do that. And it goes to the right people automatically. And I will be sending out a link to that to all the recipients and publicly on our website for people to do that. But I wanted to kind of go over why I'm advocating for us to keep the system. And it's not just to keep our jobs. Listen, I can get another job. It's not that. It's keeping the system. Anybody want any feedback or questions? I think Luke,
Yeah. Hey, Michael, can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
Sweet, sweet. I'm calling in on my phone, so
Yeah.
might have a technical difficulty. Anyway, I was curious about, and you kind of alluded to some theories about what the impetus of this was. Why did they decide change to change all of this? But I
Mhm.
was curious if you knew like more details around it. Specifically, who was behind this? Like who was like drafting this up? And maybe there's a lobbyist group, maybe there's other reasons, other people involved. Obviously, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. So I'm curious about that. And then my second question is, you mentioned reform a few times. You said
Yeah,
many times you highlighted, I think it was part 6 in which you talked about the regional centers and
right.
how you can't, they don't communicate. And that proposal right there seems like a very straightforward and very smart, common sense pitch. But
Mhm.
are there other things that we could think about reform? And
Yeah,
as we begin to negotiate or we send letters
yeah,
to Michigan,
sure.
can we put some of those reforms in so we can all kind of
Yeah.
have a same kind of email template or premise that we can send them where they can be like, oh, okay, these are practical reformed things.
And
Thank you.
so I'll answer both of those in tandem. What I'll do is I'll develop a document that says current system reforms that I believe are necessary. So that when you're responding to the state, you can say, look, you don't have to do this proposal. We just have to reform these things in the current system. So I'll put that together, Luke, and I'll talk about them. So what's
Well, I
behind
appreciate
this?
that.
So what's behind this? Some of this is just opinion, because really it's the sole discretion of Elizabeth Hortel and Megan Gogan, who Elizabeth is the director of that department, and Megan is the person that is like the COO of the behavioral health stuff. So it's really their collective efforts to come together and make this proposal. In fact, the video that is on the state site, which we sent the link to you, has Megan talking about it. It's Elizabeth Hortel who what I'm about to say, I can't prove, but I can just tell you the current state of things. Right now, out of the current 10 PHPs that we have, the regions that we have, 5 of them, including us, our region, did not sign the current contract with the state to be the Medicaid provider, manager of it. We had some contractual differences and we were in negotiations with that. And we basically didn't sign the contract. And because we didn't sign the contract, the state's like, fine, we'll get somebody else to do it, is one theory, instead of coming back to the table and those things. Now, that's just an opinion. I can't speak for Elizabeth Hortel and the department. There may be tons of other variables that I or other people have no idea about, but they're not telling us any. We haven't gotten, as a system, we've tried to meet with the state many times. They won't even talk to us about it. No, it's over. Not even say, well, what was the reasoning? Nope, it's over. We can't even get a seat at the table to discuss why at this point. So the 60-year partnership we've had since the Kennedy Community Mental Health Act, where we're part of the state, because we're part of that department, has been severed. There's no partnership at the moment. It's like a divorce, but not knowing the terms of the divorce. Okay, so the why, I can only speculate. The what is really telling. This puts the public mental health system as a carve out from regular medical plans that are managing as a carve in, bringing it back in and eliminating what was established in the Public Mental Health Act and everything else on how we deliver mental health services for the most severely impaired. So I can only guess on the why. To me, it doesn't make logical sense. So what needs to be reformed? Okay. Right now, in the 10 regions, one cannot say this thing. We offer relatively the same rates for the same type of service. Can't say that. That's a problem. One can't say this either. The amount, scope, and duration of a service authorized from one CMH is within statistical norms consistent from all the other CMHs. That's not true either. That's a problem. We should have stricter guidelines and stricter control on how one determines amount, scope, and duration. We have person-centered plan that does that. That's supposed to drive it. But it leads to a wide variance of what client A gets versus client B. And so in our appeal process, if you've ever been through the appeals, we're fighting that all the time. How did you determine, Michael, at Ottawa, that this person gets 11 units of this, where in Muskegon they would get 13? So the regions need to be strengthened to help shape what the benefit limits are within person-centered planning, individual differences. And I got to tell you, Luke, as a system, we're not good enough in that area yet.
Yeah.
There is, we're just not. So when I was working as managing a residential provider program, I'd have 10 beds in a home, 5 of them one county, 5 of them in another. And how they determine rate, how they determine the level of care are different. So we can improve that way. But you don't do that by saying, all right, 3 regions, centralize it, cut off CMH, because then you have some person sitting in a cubicle in the middle of the state going, I think it's this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
go out to my providers. Yeah.
Is it possible, I mean, to be a little preemptive about this and I imagine you already have done this or thought about this, but just to talk to all the other regions and just get
Yeah.
together and say, hey, this is how we're going to approach it. We're going to approach it all together because
Yeah.
it seems shameful to me that Elizabeth hasn't allowed you a seat at the table. But if you guys all
As of
combine
right now, I
together,
mean,
as of
yeah,
right
like,
now, I know. And I also in the past have sent Elizabeth an email and I've never never received a response back.
oh,
So she's very busy. I understand, but it seems like it's just power in numbers. And if you guys can, as a multiple entities, say, hey, these are the reforms that we're going to do, whatever those are,
no.
kind of make you guys undeniable, so that she has to engage with you, or they have to engage with you.
No, I agree. And, like Mary Dumas, who runs our region, has been doing that since I've been here. I've been here a year. She's constantly saying, guys, people, right? Now, please be aware, Luke. I have no idea what Elizabeth Hartel's dealing with. I don't know all the variables. So I can't sit here in my county and go, well, I don't know. I don't know if there's other variables that I'm aware of. I'm just saying no one's aware of them, like in the system. And so
Yeah.
we could do a lot better. Even within Ottawa County, we have a long way to go on a lot of things. Like since I've been here, I'm like, we got to do better at a lot of things. But when you're fighting a massive Medicaid deficit every day, like right now, I can't say no to approving new people. I don't get new revenue that comes in, Luke. So every single time we get a new client at Ottawa County, unless the overall number of Medicaid enrollees in our county goes up, I don't get any more money. So one of the things we got to solve is there's really no incentive for CMHs to find new clients. And we got to fix that. Because I get the same amount of money if I serve one person. There's some limits to that, or 1,000. And that's a problem. This new proposal just pulls the money in a greater level, but will actually end up restricting even more the amount of money that's available for each person, because I can move it around for different types of services. I can help with individual budgets. Oh, you want 6 of these and 3 of these? And it's not perfect, but at least I can do it. I wouldn't be doing that anymore. Somebody else would. I don't know. But I'd be like rooting for families. I hope that works. Have no control over anything. unless I'm providing that service. I'd be just like Hope Network, which is a very fine organization, but they're a fee-for-service provider with a contract with, right now, a region or multiple CMHs in a region. This would sever that relationship. If you're a residential provider and you think you're going to be saved or get more money from this new arrangement, you are sorely mistaken. That will not be the case. They won't even know who you are. So I don't know. I'm kind of grandstanding a little bit. I apologize, Luke. I get passionate about
No,
these
no,
things.
I appreciate your passion. It's
You know, I
it's
mean,
welcomed.
no one's doing. I mean, am I the only one doing these meetings? Like, why isn't everybody doing it? You know, so that's the other problem. A united voice consistently, right?
Yes,
So
100%.
yeah. Any
Thanks
others?
for answering my question.
Oh, you're
Thank you
welcome.
for answering. I appreciate it, man.
Beth had two comments in the Q&A. The first one says, I may have missed it, but where can we find exactly what the state is trying to accomplish by doing this?
So there's an original website, and I think Anna posted it in the chat of the video that outlines it in 9 minutes, Beth. I covered all the main points, but what's in that video that I don't have a graph on, because I was going to show the video, is the timeline that they want to do this in. They have not released any specific information related to the actual specific requirements for these new regions besides the general points. The general points was a way to say, dear CMH system, here's what's coming. You're not in it. Dear regional entities right now, here's what's coming with these general principles. You're not in it. So it was a preemptive way of saying that they're looking for providers of these major systems to not be a current PHP and cannot have any relationship in terms of governance, co-management, managed care functions with the CMH. And when you do that, on the Medicaid side only, which is 80% of what we do, you reduce us to nothing more than a provider that would have to ask for a contract with this new entity to provide a service, not to manage a service, provide a service. So remember the conflict of interest question? Boy, doesn't CMH have a conflict of interest? Well, we won't anymore. I'll be in complete competition with a 60-year head start than other providers on several services. And we may or may not, as a county, decide we want to be a Medicaid provider of all the services we do, especially if the rate of reimbursement is bad, like any other provider does. Like, I don't know, how do I keep doing this? The other thing, Beth, that hasn't been addressed yet that is government immunity or protections. Right now, CMHs have governmental immunity against lawsuits on individuals because we're part of this kind of system in a quasi-governmental role attached to the county. I have a question into the state saying, does a CMH lose that authority when they're just a provider? And the preliminary answer is yes. So we wouldn't have governmental immunity. We'd be like every other provider that doesn't have it. That's good or bad, depending on how you look at it. But it will be a huge determination if counties want to participate in that. What's the risk? So we'll have to look at that.
Like Beth,
Okay.
we had a couple more kind of comments and one, it looks like a part question. So she just said, thanks for your
Yeah, I got
answer
it.
just now. And then the other one was from about 10 minutes ago. That is my thought too. If we know what they are trying to accomplish, can we provide some alternatives?
And I think that that's a great point that Luke and Bev said. I think what I'll do, like next week, I have a meeting, Anna, you go to this too, with all of the CEOs of the CMHs and the PHPs, the current regions. And I'm going to say we have to develop quickly an acknowledgement of reform and what we're thinking this is trying to do and how we can do it. And what I want is to make sure it's a joint agreed upon message. Or Luke, I'll be back to the same thing. There's Bashir's trying to do the right thing and everybody else is like, I don't know, right? So I think I'll bring it back to this group next week and say, we need to develop of here's what the state is saying in terms of why they're doing it, and here's how we can accomplish it within the same time frame, so that procurement isn't needed. I think that's probably, in fact, that's what I know I'll do. And if all of us can't get together to do that, that tells us something, right? So I think that that's the right approach. Instead of saying how the current plan is bad, we have to acknowledge what the reform needs are and address them, which I think we have to do like now. Like if we wait until August, it'll be too late. So I will spearhead that effort within the state with the local, with the CMHs, CEOs, and the PHPs to come up with a acknowledgement of reform and plan to reform that we all sign off on. It'd be great to have all signatures on it. Yeah, Luke agrees with that. Good. And so and then we can present it, because I mean, there are some real issues for sure. For sure. I'm just telling you, if this goes through, my ability to address any of the concerns I've heard, won't be there. Like, I don't know, Billy. Good luck. I'm rooting for you. And one of the reasons why I came back into managing the system is because it's a distinct tradition of care. I'm concerned about all populations with this, but I'm very concerned for adults with developmental disabilities. If they don't split the funding and manage it differently from this idea, you think we have problems now, I worry what's going to happen to that group. And in other states, one state comes to mind where this happened, there was a negative impact. It'll come to me in a moment. But it's one thing to say Johnny doesn't get 11 sessions of therapy, he can have 8. It's another to say this person with an adult developmental disability can no longer have an adequate level of CLS because we're now arbitrarily saying the cap is 10 hours a week and figure it out. We have some of those issues within our system now. But the whole appeal system would have to change. The right system would have to be re-examined. And I don't know if they thought about those things at the state. I'm hoping they are. We don't know because they won't talk to us. They won't even let us co-manage this thing. Like if it happens, how do we go through a transition? How do we deal with that? Well, we got to wait till we release the details, see who wins the contract, then we'll do that. The whole window is 15 months. From application to selection of the big people to do these regions to implementation, 15 months. We can't even implement a new tool in the system in 15 months, like an assessment tool. We're going to change the fundamental fabric of what we do in 15 months. It doesn't, it actually makes me think all of the people that are in charge of this might be out of a job in 2 years or 15 months because there'd be a new administration in there. I don't know. If you want to do it, you better do it quickly if you're in that department, because there may be different people running it in 15 months. Again, I don't know all the variables that Elizabeth Hortel is dealing with. I don't even pretend to know. It is one of the hardest jobs in the state by far. And so I'm only coming from one corner of this with a limited view. I just don't understand it. So I'll just keep on sending information out to folks, the impact to CMH. Good news is we did get 140 million of the 200 million pushed out. I got to make sure it lands in the right place now. And we'll go on from there. And I'll leave this off unless there's any final things people want to address.
There's just one comment that I see in the Q&A that Beth said yes.
Yes, okay.
responding to One of
Yeah.
one of your items. I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, great. So what we're gonna do, this is a recording, it'll be available for the people. You know, tell other people if you think it was helpful for me to have this discussion to watch it. Hopefully, I've been trying to kind of give you information on what I know. I kind of will sometimes do this too quickly, like, oh, you don't have all the details yet. Well, if I know it's like that 70 shows, Lost in Space, like Danger, Will Robinson, I'm not waiting to let people know I think that. So sometimes it can be like, well, I'm an alarmist or I'm scaring people. Well, this isn't print. This is a real thing with real implications. I wish I was just being an alarmist. So my next thing will be to really get that document that Beth, Luke, and others say is a good idea. Like, okay, what are the concerns and what's our plan to address them within the same time period as this new entity would? And if you're a family member that has a loved one in our care or you're a guardian, please know that my job is to really make sure that you have the best shot of getting what you need, even though we have tons of work to do here. So I'm not saying we're doing this perfectly or we have it all figured out. But like the police department, you have to have reforms from time to time and deal with it. We're just like them. We're a government agency. Okay, everybody, I really appreciate your time and look forward to attend another of the Did You Know series. The topic, date, and time will be sent out as soon as I have it. And have a great day.